This podcast is proud to be sponsored by Tuvu. Tuvu connects people, families, and communities on their values based social media platform. There's no ads, no explicit content, just fun. Check it out at tuvu.com. Melanie Hempe's oldest son, Adam, had to drop out of college because he was addicted to video games. That's when this mama bear sprang into action. She created an incredible educational program to prevent kids and parents from enduring the pain of screen addiction. This is going to be so interesting, moms. Stay with us.
You know, I've never really felt comfortable sharing pictures of my kids on social media. Then I found Tuvu, a premium social app with an actual, authentic community. No bots, no one trolling me or my family. Just clean, wholesome content you can trust.
Welcome to the Moms for America podcast. Each week, special guests tackle the issues facing the moms of America today. Discussions include personal stories and advice on how moms can build a strong foundation of faith, family, and freedom in their homes and country. Hi, moms. I'm Debbie Kurlitis, your host, and I'm so glad that you're joining us here on the Moms for America podcast this week. This is a show inspiring, encouraging, and educating moms in their journey through motherhood. So thank you. Thank you for coming. We're so glad to have you always, every week. Right here on the top of the show, I always want to invite everyone to like, subscribe, and share. Please go ahead and go ahead, subscribe, and share this with your mom friends. This is going to be a very interesting podcast, once again, on a topic for all of us, screen addiction. Wow. Alrighty. Also, if you have an idea or suggestion for the podcast, would you please email me at podcast@momsforamerica.net. Get such great information from you and suggested guests. I would love to have your input on that. Also, if you're joining us and you have not joined our movement, you haven't joined Moms for America, why not? We need you here. We're here for you. We're an incredible tribe of women all across the country. We have about 500,000 moms in our network. We are uniting all across the country, literally, to fight for faith, family, freedom, and the Constitution. We have incredible resources for you, an incredible community of moms here to support you on your journey through motherhood. Go ahead, check us out at momsforamerica.us. All you do is you sign up for our newsletter and you will then become a part of our family. You can check out all of our resources. You'll get all this incredible information that can help you in your home and in your community. All right, on to today's program. Well, moms, I am so excited to introduce you to Melanie Hempe. Now, Melanie has a nursing degree, which she put to very good use, by the way, when she discovered her oldest son, Adam, had an addiction. He was addicted to video gaming. Now, since that time, Melanie has worked tirelessly to make the brain science of screen addiction understandable and preventable to kids and parents alike through her nonprofit, ScreenStrong. Welcome, Melanie, to the Moms for America podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, before we get started, I've got so much, I can't wait to talk with you about this topic because, boy, do moms all across the country have to deal with this situation on a regular basis in their home every day. They got to make these important decisions for their home. But before we jump in, would you tell us a little bit about your family? We always want to get to know our moms.
Yeah, for sure. My background is in nursing, a registered nurse, and we have 4 children. And what happened with us, with our oldest, it's very common. This happens with a lot of oldest kids because parents aren't sure what they're doing around screens. But our oldest
First, tell me,
child,
how many kids you have?
we have 4.
4, you said. Okay, great.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay.
We have 4, and our oldest son was very addicted to video games right under our nose when he was in middle school and high school. And we did not know there was such a thing as a video game addiction, like most parents out
Right.
there. And I'd been to nursing school and I had thought, you know what? You can't be addicted to a video game. That doesn't make any sense, right? Because I didn't understand. And back then, there wasn't quite as much research as there is today on this topic. So when
Sure.
we picked Adam up from college, is when I discovered the heartbreaking fact that he was truly addicted. You know, all through middle school and high school, it was a nuisance, I would say.
Yeah.
We argued a lot. There was a lot of conflict. And I'm just being really transparent here to say that it was really tough. It was one of
So
those
you
things that,
kind of saw it coming maybe,
oh,
but
yeah,
not
we
to
knew
that
there was a
you knew there was a
problem.
problem, yeah.
Oh, for sure. We knew there was a problem. But we thought that he would outgrow this
Sure.
juvenile habit of wanting to play video games all the time. And I did not understand how the screen was really working on his brain, right? And it was
Yeah.
really changing a lot of things in his development. And I didn't understand that. I just thought, well, this is just a bad habit that he would outgrow when he started his life, right, in college. But I just want to reiterate that it did cause a lot of pain in our
Sure.
home. And so if your audience is listening today and they are feeling very alone and isolated because they think they have the only child that is causing a lot
Right.
of pain in their house, they're not. It's very disheartening to have to
Mhm.
discipline your kid all the time around video game.
Right.
Adam, please come to dinner. Adam, come to your sister's birthday. Hey, Adam, could you come open Christmas presents with us? You know, you're constantly
Wow.
trying to pull that child back into your family, and you get really frustrated with the video game. So then you get really frustrated with them. But Adam was a straight A student. So that kind of stumped my husband and I.
Mm,
We as parents, and it's a very bad mistake that parents make, where we use grades as sort of the litmus test if our kids are okay. And so he had straight A's, but he was not okay.
sure.
And so we picked him up from college. That ride home, because when I picked him up out of his dorm room, I knew something was wrong with him. He looked terrible. He had not bathed in a week. He had not been eating. And, you know, I asked that dreaded
Yeah.
question. Well, I asked that dreaded question, Adam, are you on drugs? Because he looked like he was on drugs, and he was in the car and he looked at me and he said, Mom, I am not on drugs. That video game did something to me. I haven't been to class. I'm dropping out of college. I can't function. And that's when it hit me on the highway
Oh,
driving home. It
my.
hit me that all these years that he was struggling, we didn't know. And, you know, he was right. That game did do something to him. And I dove into the research. I went to lots of conferences. I talked to a lot of neuroscientists and friends that I knew from Emory. I was in school at Emory before, and I learned so much about screen addiction. And it is a
Mm.
chemical imbalance in a child's brain, in our brain. But what happens with
Can
children is
can
very
I
different.
ask you just one quick question before you go too far here?
Yeah.
So he recognized that it was the game. He knew that
Oh,
he
yeah.
could not survive without it. He wasn't able to do anything but that. Did any of your other children have similar situations? Because I want to get to the fact before we go to some of the answers here in the story. But do
Mhm.
certain children have a tendency maybe for this? Would you say
Um,
that that's true or
no,
no?
I know that people like to try to
I'm
think that,
wondering.
and I feel like if you give me your child, the 6 weeks later, I can turn him into a gaming addict. You
Okay,
know?
okay. I was just
Um,
wondering what your opinion was on that because some people will say this, my
yeah,
child just tended to like be
right.
more of a loner, maybe they were
Well,
um
and so you've got to understand that the reason why that they are awkward and lonely is because they are playing their video games. So it's like,
right,
what comes first, the chicken or the
right.
egg?
It's a
And
circle.
so, I mean, I don't mean to treat this lightly, but I do want to say that every child has a potential for a screen addiction. Every single
Sure.
child does,
Oh, I believe
because of
that.
the way screens are designed. The screen is designed by attention engineers, right?
Yeah.
Big, hugely paid
Mhm.
neuroscientists who are making that game and that phone and that app and
Absolutely.
the social media as addictive as possible. And I don't necessarily vilify those companies at all, because, you know, that's their job. My
Right.
job is to know this, and my job is to protect my kids as much as I can, and allow them to gradually grow up and gradually go through their rites of passages on the right time frame, not to
Mhm.
throw them into a situation where it is just way too powerful for them.
Mhm.
So this is what happened with Adam, and it was an
Right.
experiment, and it was a terrible experiment, and
Sure it
it
was.
failed. And so with my younger kids, we said, you know what, guys, when my daughter was next in line, I said, a flip
Mm.
phone, you're not getting a smartphone. I don't even know all the
Yeah.
things yet about why, but I know that this experiment didn't work well on your brother. And so
Right. So then you had to look at the rest of the tribe there at home,
Yes. Yes.
sure. And so you made some decisions for the family as well. And you, I guess, in your journey, made these decisions now for the rest of the family.
That's correct. And we hit the pause button. And what I learned about the science
Yeah, let's talk
behind,
about that.
yeah, screen time in kids is what made me change my mind. So I just want to say that I have made every mistake in the book. All right. So I'm not trying to judge people. I'm not trying to say, oh, we should all know this. It's very complicated when you don't understand the science. So there's a couple things about the science, about brain science, and in particular, teenage brain science, that's really important to understand. And the very
Mm,
first thing is that that teenage brain is not completely developed until the age of 25. So
correct.
we're handing over a highly powerful, very addictive substance, if you will, to our kids during a stage of their development where their brain isn't ready. And when I say that they're not ready, the frontal cortex is the last thing to develop in the human brain. And what that means is that the connections aren't fully there until
Hmm.
around, 20 to 25. And so
Yep.
we all need to take a big deep breath and just relax and say, you know what? They're just not ready for this yet. And we know that teenagers are very impulsive, which is their wonderful survival skill. They have to
Right.
be. It's a stage they go through where they're taking high risk. Their impulse control is really low. They're craving low effort, high reward activities. And so parents need to be coaches. We need to stop being our kids' best friend, and we need
Hmm.
to coach them through this time of development. The other thing that I didn't understand about brain development is very well until I dove into this research is this thing called neuronal pruning. And so what happens when a child goes through puberty, the brain reorganizes and says, okay, what pathways are we using? What pathways are we
Mm,
not using? And we get
okay.
rid of the ones that we're not using, right? Because the brain is very efficient. And so if your child in middle school doesn't get over that hump of learning how to be social in awkward situations, because it's all awkward, then,
Yeah, sure
when
is.
their screen is so much more,
Their best
fun,
friend.
and it's
It's
their
their
best,
literally,
yeah,
I've had kids tell me that it is their best friend.
it is their
They
best
could
friend.
not survive without it.
That's
We
right.
we did a lot with, watching screens here. I didn't give my phone, my son any social media, until he was 18.
Mhm.
Everyone got phones, only going into high school. And I keep telling parents, you surely can do this.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
easy. And so this is why
Right.
I'm so excited for you to have the answers to this. So
Yes.
now we know how addictive it is. We know that their
Yes.
brains are just literally not capable
Right.
of handling all this. And it's not only it's the phone, it's the TV, it's
So
the
it's
games, it's all of these screens,
Yeah, it's a
right?
little different with passive versus interactive screens, and that's a really great point to make. So kids are not getting addicted to Excel spreadsheets, for example, right? So they're not getting addicted to these passive screens, which are more the ones like TV. Watching a football game or baseball game doesn't require constant feedback from you. So that is the difference. And at ScreenStrong, we make the difference between toxic screens and non-toxic screens. And so the toxic screens are the ones you want to stay away from during
Yeah.
adolescence, and that is social media, video games, and pornography. Those are the three areas that are super toxic, especially for teenagers.
Yeah.
So we're not a screen-free, organization, but we are a science, based
Safe screen.
organization.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Safe
and just
screens.
let's figure out which pieces of this is really, which pieces are hurting our
Mhm.
kids, and that's what we need to focus on as parents. And so with my younger sons, I have twins that are younger, and I just said, guys, no video games and no social media for you. And guess what they did? They did piano, they did
Right.
violin, they went out in the backyard,
Played
they were in
sports.
sports, they
Right.
were really physical outside all the time. And then as they graduated, and they were in high school, just recently graduated, they were the student body president and the class, president. It's kind of like, wow, look at
Mhm.
all these things
Look at
that
all
you
these
can do.
opportunities.
Right, right.
And all these experiences that you can really experience. How hard is it to reverse, I'll say an addiction? Let's go back to Adam, and how did this all work for him? What did you do?
So he came home, right, from college, and announced that he wasn't going back. And, which was probably a good thing. He didn't need to go back if he was going to play video games. And it is the number one reason why college freshmen boys drop out of college, is because they're playing video games and they don't go to class and they don't have their mom there, set the kitchen timer. So he came home, and it was very devastating for our family, because when you
Mhm.
launch a child, it's very hard for, 9 months later for them to come home and they're living on your sofa again. and you think you're never going to want your kids to leave home, but you do, and there's a process and they need to leave. So I ended up, because I didn't know what to do, I was
Sure.
learning about all this addiction and I didn't understand, but all I knew is that Adam could not keep playing video games for
No.
the next few years. Like that wasn't going to work.
Right.
So
That wasn't
I
the answer.
no,
Yeah.
that was not the answer. And by now he's 18, he's bigger than me. I can't really control what he's doing. And so I called the military, believe it or not, didn't know what to do. And my friends were all like, how can you do that? I'm like, you don't understand. He will be safer in the military than he will here at home because I don't know what to do with him.
Well,
And
I think let me just stop for a second too. You knew there had to be a fundamental change. And I
yes,
know all of us as parents, this is the moment where like, well, there has to be a complete shift
yes,
for the
yes,
safety of our child. And we've all done this in different moments in different ways, but I'm just pointing this out. You knew there had to be a shift and you were going to make
yes.
the shift happen.
Happen. And fortunately, he joined the military, and what he got was 14 weeks of a screen detox, and it was called basic training. And what I didn't understand then that I understand
Yeah,
now is that's exactly what he needed. His brain
sure.
needed to reset, get off all the video games and all the high dopamine producing screen activities, because that's what it is. It's dopamine that's being produced. In fact, I've read recently that video games fall between nicotine and cocaine on the scale of dopamine in your brain. And
Wow.
it's dopamine is a good thing, right? But too much dopamine is addiction. And when we
Right.
live in dopamine monergic activities that are so high, like video games and like social media, our kids really suffer and their brain changes. So he went into the army for 5 years. He did come back and he actually finished school, and we're very proud of him. But,
Yay.
there's still a lot of scars. And he loves what we do over here at ScreenStrong. And he says, Mom, you need to tell as many families as you possibly can about my story to save these kids because they don't know what they're doing. We don't as parents. And,
Mm,
I certainly didn't know, but
yeah.
now we do. And now, with just all of our information at ScreenStrong, I have put together everything that I wish I had known back when I was raising a boy on video games. I wish I had known the warning signs.
Yeah.
I wish I had known about dopamine and how the production is so increased when kids are on screens. I just didn't
Yeah.
know. So I
Right.
think parents are really struggling, and they don't need to struggle. They need to understand the facts, and then you have a clear direction. And we don't say
Mhm.
no forever. There is a
Right.
period of development that is so vulnerable,
Mm.
and we need to protect that period of development. And it doesn't mean we're overprotecting our kids. In fact, my younger three kids are so independent. They are so not overprotected. They were on their bikes riding, to the store way before any other my
Well,
other
if you
friends,
right,
would
if
ride.
you think about it, they are on the forefront of making those big decisions for themselves. Do we join this
Absolutely.
sport? How do we
Yes.
contribute? If we how do we rehearse? How do we play? Like
Yes.
those are decisions that are,
And
those
they're
are
asking
right,
me and my husband
important.
instead
Right.
of Google for the
Right.
answers.
Right. So those when
So
you to put them
yeah.
back in the driver's seat for decision making
Yes.
and setting goals and all this stuff. How do you see a child that's being addicted? It's probably very obvious, but I do
Yeah.
want you to just make it really clear. Just talk to our moms about what you can see coming. And then I want to talk about the fact about what decisions do you make in your home
Okay.
regarding screens?
Well, the warning signs really center around, first of all, you have a gut feeling that something isn't right. And the reason we have a gut feeling is because the
Hmm.
child's use is increasing over time. They're starting to
Hmm.
get moody when you unplug the screen. If you take their video game away, they have a meltdown on the kitchen floor. I mean, I've seen 14-year-old boys, look like toddlers, because you took their video game away. If it's the only thing that puts them in a good mood, you're in
Hmm.
trouble. If it's
Okay.
if they're lying about their use, if it's affecting the relationship you have with your kids and their relationship with you, like they don't want to spend as much time and they're detaching from your family, that is a huge warning sign. I think a quick warning sign is if your child can't list two or three things that they love more than that screen, then you're headed for trouble. But
Good.
it's not balance. And we say all the time, people say, well, you should balance it, Melanie. You shouldn't just say no to video games or no to social media. Well, what we learned is that you don't balance addictive activities. Yes, you balance
Mm,
other things, but you don't balance alcohol, right? We don't balance pornography. Like that's a really
mhm.
bad idea for
Right.
teenagers to balance all these things that are highly addictive. So that's where the rub comes in. That's where the science comes in.
Mhm.
This is not like, a curfew, or not like, deciding what they, what your rules are around what they can wear or what color their hair is. That's not what this is.
Sure.
You can't balance an addictive activity. So you hit the pause button, just like we pause other things in kids' lives, like drugs and alcohol. You don't ever just open your medicine cabinet and say, here you go, have as much medicine as you want. We don't do that with other addictive activities. So we
Mhm.
absolutely should not do that with screens. We're a very positive approach over here. We're not all about being negative. We're about opening doors and looking at what are all the incredible, wonderful things you can do now that you're not
Right.
spending 9 hours a day on a screen, which is the average amount of time that the average
9
teenager
hours.
spends. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, one of the things we've talked with Crystal, which is one of the gals in your team,
The ambassador. Yeah.
yeah, and, she had some really interesting insight because her point was you have to decide on the forefront. Now we've got 2 camps, probably of moms that are watching.
Yeah.
Moms that children are playing video games, they know there's a problem, they're trying to control it and regulate it, number 1. Then number 2 is they've got them coming up, they got little ones,
They can
and they gotta
prevent
yeah,
it.
and they gotta figure out because now remember, we didn't have iPads. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a whole new world. You had to go
Yeah.
downstairs and sit in front of a game. Now you can carry it
Yes.
around,
That's the problem.
which is
Yeah.
another huge addiction.
Yeah.
So I know that. So we kind of talk to the moms now, and we're going to give some resources to them that are in the situation. But once you have little ones, you have to decide whether you're going to be a screen, an
Mhm.
iPad home
Mhm.
from a
Mhm.
very young
Mhm.
age, right?
Mhm.
Some people use it as a babysitter, and I get it. It's
Yeah, it works.
sometimes you
It's
just
a
want to
drug.
say, here's a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But Crystal and I know your organizations just talk about the fact that you have to make these decisions on the front end because that screen time becomes either a punishment or you're bartering with it. It becomes a big player in your
Yeah.
home. I'd like you to address that.
Yeah, and this is a big mistake that parents make, is they use screen time for a reward, and we have to remember that we should never use something for a reward in our house that we don't value. So unless you value lots and lots of time on, video games and social media and screens, then do not use it as a reward. I personally
Mm.
detest iPads. I think they're one of the worst things that were ever invented, even almost more than the phone, because they are like phones, but people don't think they're like phones. And so they give them to their little kids, and toddlers wag around with them all the time. It is such a, a bad first beginning step. It's a gateway, right,
Sure, I
to
would think
what's going to
so.
happen down the road. So when are you going to take the iPad away, right? When they're 10 and they're looking up sexual content? Well, yeah, I guess that's a good time. But why do we start? Why do we start with the iPad? And so kids are very resilient. And what you can do is you can find a lot of different things to entertain your kids that don't involve screens. Once you step on that slope, it is slippery and it will be very difficult to take it away. Yeah,
Mhm.
some people feel this way about pacifiers. Some people feel this way about giving their kids juice, for example. If you give them juice, then they're probably not going to want water anymore. So it's really important to
Decision
decide.
making, right, that you have to
Yeah,
do as a mom.
yeah.
And the other day, I was in a restaurant, and we had 2 different young families sitting by us. One, the child was on the iPad,
Mhm.
and the other was completely separate, different table, and they had crayons and coloring
Crayons.
books.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
we've lost that fact. I know you did too, you always traveled around with
yeah,
crayons and books and,
yeah.
everything, puzzles, and they would
Yeah,
fall over.
Mary Poppins purse, you
Right.
pulled everything out.
And now I don't
Yeah,
think a lot of moms are doing that because of the iPad. So, I mean, this is not we're not
yeah.
busting anybody's,
No, yeah,
ideas here right now,
right,
but you do have
right.
to figure it out because it is a long life for your child and you are making those decisions.
Well, I'll tell you, you pay now or you pay later.
Yeah.
And some people will be able to do it and some people won't. But if you are really interested in learning how to do this, we got the answers for you. We actually have a curriculum that you can use to teach your kids about brain development when they're in middle school. And the cool thing is we have a K through third grade book coming out, a little book coming out that
Mm.
you can use to explain to your kids why there's certain screen time that we are not going to do in our house and why it's hurting their brain. So I'm so excited about all the different educational pieces that we have over here, because I know from my medical background that we have to start with education. You can't just go in and start ripping things out, right, of your home.
Right.
It would be best if you didn't have them to start with. So if you have toddlers right now, then just go put them up. It'll take you 5 minutes to do that. But if your
Right.
kids are a little bit older, then you're going to have to explain to them, hey, we made a mistake. We allowed some things into our house that now we're learning about the brain science, and now we're learning about
Mhm.
what this is going to do, and it's going to hurt our family, our relationship. And I really don't want to fight with you about this. I don't want to have fights in our house about screen time. So we're hitting
Mhm.
the pause button. It's not no forever. It's a pause button. We're going to hit the pause button. We're going to put this aside. And guess what? We're going to learn how to make cupcakes today. We're going to go out and
Mm.
do something fun outside. We've got to replace it.
We
So
do.
and that's for parents. They think it's really hard to do that. And let me tell you a little secret. It's a little tricky at first because you do have to spend some time putting things
Sure.
in the path for your kids. But
Mhm.
once you do that, then their creativity takes over, and your middle school and high school years are going to be so much easier because you will no longer be the bad guy. Your kids will learn how to do life without that crutch, right?
Mhm.
That is suffocating, all of their senses, and it's suffocating their social life as they get a little bit older.
Mhm.
You've got to help your kids. You've got to be a coach.
Yeah,
Take your
sure
parenting
do.
hat off and quit trying to be an emotional best friend. You need to be a coach.
Yes.
And when you are the coach and your team is losing, what do? You go
That's
get a
right.
new game plan. You set your team down. You say, okay, look, guys, I have your best interest in mind. I love you. I care for you,
Mhm.
but I'm going to be really firm. And I'm going to tell you, we're doing our core exercises today.
Right.
And we're going to learn how to
That's
hold
it.
that baseball bat again. Right.
That's
So,
right. I remember saying to my kids, "Write down 5 things that you think you would love to do.
yes,
No price ticket on it.
yes,
What do you think you'd like to do?
yeah,
Write down those 5, and one of those 5 we're gonna make happen." And
that's
just
right.
teach them to dream. Teach them
Yes.
to have hope. Teach them to
Yeah.
look beyond the horizon here. Life is
Yeah.
so much bigger than these games. The other thing
Right.
I want you to tell us about your organization, where we can find you, and I want you to hold up that book and show us, because this curriculum is
Yeah.
something that the kids can go through. Now, homeschool, not homeschool, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
This is a
matter.
book. Tell us
This
about
is
that.
this is a
This is the
textbook,
answer.
right? This is the answer. And you can see it's written like a graphic novel, right? So it has a lot of really cool
Super
graphics
cool.
in it. And I don't know if you can see if I'm showing it right, but let me just show you this one right here that I love. This is one of my favorite graphics in here. It talks about dopamine, because how are you going to explain this to your kids about dopamine? Well, here we go. We've got a
Right.
chart in here that we explain where everything fits on this chart. So all the fun things you do outside and reading books and hanging out with people is in the green area. And that's what you want to do. You want to do more things that have that healthy amount of dopamine, but everything up here is at high level of dopamine. And when we have high level of dopamine, what happens next is if it goes up, it must come down. And if you can see that graph, it goes
Mhm.
down. And this is where you get depressed and anxious. And we're in the middle of a mental health crisis in our country. And parents need to help kids understand. And again, this is our most requested piece that we have had over the last decade that I've been working in this space. This is for schools. It is for private
Mm.
schools. It's for public schools. It doesn't matter, charter schools. It's also just for you. If you want to, every night at dinner time, take a little
Sure.
section, and explain. It's just really fun discussions. Plus, parents are learning a lot through this too. And then, of
Mhm.
course, also for homeschool families, this is a science credit. It's a digital citizenship credit. It's the
Right.
best digital credit you'll ever get.
Right.
And it,
Incorporate this curriculum into your home. Again, you don't have to do it as a school project. It can be a
right.
complement to it. Like you said, this could be something you do every Sunday for a
Yes.
half hour together as a family.
Yeah.
Because I'll
Yeah.
tell you, not only kids are dealing with screen addictions, the parents are.
Right.
So, this is for all of us. This
This
is
is for
really,
all of us. And I think
right?
it's really good when moms a lot of times will get this workbook, and they'll get 6 of their friends together and they have a book club and they go through this and then they go teach it to their kids. That is one of the best ways,
Mm,
that you can do it. But I want to just say really quick, because there's a lot of people that get to the point where they say, oh, we can't use our phones either because we have to model good behavior. And I mean, part of that is true. But I want parents to understand that they are the parent, they are the coach. Your child is not the coach. Your child is
right.
not the parent. So we need to parent
Good point.
appropriately,
Mhm.
right? We have our tools, and yes, our screens and our phones, and we can get we can overuse them for sure, but we're paying bills, we're making dentist appointments, we're doing things, we're
Mhm.
working. And so I don't want parents to think, oh, we have to throw out all of our
Mhm.
screens. That's not what we're talking about. Just like if you're a mom, you may have a glass of wine at night, but your kids don't have a glass of wine at night.
Good
There's
point.
certain things that we do as adults that our kids don't do. So we make that clear too. This isn't about throwing everything out. This is about age appropriate use and how you as a parent can get confident about this. I think this is one of the most stressful topics in our culture today with parenting. And,
Yeah.
and we're scared, and we don't need to be scared, and we don't need to be stressed. We need to get the facts, and
Yeah.
then the answers are so clear. And then I promise you, there will be a minute where your kids get mad, maybe. Yes,
Mhm.
my boys thought during middle school, every Christmas, they were going to get a smartphone. No, they didn't. But you know what?
That was it. Yeah.
Then by high school, they were fine. And they were not only fine, they were thriving. They had so many friends. We had our house every Friday night. We had all the kids over here. And like you just said a minute ago, I didn't care how much money I spent on groceries. And I spent a lot of money on food. I'm like, guys, you can have anybody you want. I
Right.
will buy any amount of pizza. Y'all are
Same
here.
thing over
You're
here. Yeah. I
having,
did
you're
the
playing
same
board
thing.
games. They just want to be together.
Mhm.
That's what they want. Teenagers want to hang out with each other. And by giving them a phone, we are stunting that. We are suffocating that social development. We have to realize as parents, that's not a great idea. We're not anti-screen. We're not, going backwards in time. We're actually ahead of the game. And when you take that smartphone away from your child and you give them a basic phone, that's fine. A basic phone that doesn't have the internet on it. And we have on our website, we have some suggestions for that. You are not stunting them at all. You are upgrading their phone from a smartphone to a
Yes.
basic phone. So then they can look up, they can have friends. You know what? Sometimes they just need to not do anything, and that's okay too. They need to understand how to handle their
Yeah.
downtime, how to be
That's
bored.
Isn't that true? A lot of creativity is lost now because no one
Right.
ever, and I find this with myself. I used to write a lot, and because I'm so busy on this, I've lost
Yeah.
my creativity because you don't
Yes.
ever
Yes.
sit anymore.
And
You're
there's no
literally
innovation. And our
right.
kids
There's
used to
no
be very
dreaming. Yeah,
dreaming and innovative. And when my kids didn't have smartphones in middle school, they actually made a board game. They created a whole board game. It took them hours and days and weeks. That was fabulous. They
sure.
did lots of things like that. Your kids are amazing, but we have to take off this weight. We got to get them out of the city dump. That's what they're doing. They're playing in the city dump. We need to get them out of the city dump, put them in the backyard, and let them have a childhood. And I will just say this, and as we start to wrap up here, that my son, my oldest son, says, "Mom, I hated my childhood. I didn't have a childhood," and that
Mm.
is very
Breaks your heart.
upsetting.
Yeah.
That is very upsetting. And I'm not trying to get over emotional about this, but that is very emotional for me. It's very hurtful. And yet we've made our peace, and I've apologized to him. And I was determined that the younger kids in my house were going to have a childhood. And I was determined that they were going to have stories. I wanted them to have stories
Mm.
that they could share with their kids. And one of my boys calls it, he'll say something like, Mom, hey, I just created a dad story today. It's something I'm going to tell my kids
I love that.
when I have kids. And I can honestly say that with Adam, he missed that. And we are very
That's
sad.
heartbreaking. Sure.
It's hard, and you can't go back. You can't go
Mm-mm.
back. But I want to give you hope. Even if you have
That's
a
right.
teenager right now who is addicted to video games, and you can go on our site and you can take the little test and you can see all the things on there. There is hope.
What's your website again, please?
It's screenstrong.org. And you can go there and learn all about all kinds of age appropriate things. Plus, you can also click over to kidsbrainsandScreens.com, and that's where we have the curriculum. And again, this curriculum has lesson plans, scope and sequence.
Yeah.
It's a full curriculum with activity sheets and all that. But if you go to screenstrong.org, you can go there and get a lot of information about how to help. And my heart really breaks. It goes out to the older kids because they were swept away
They
in
sure
this
were.
screen culture, and this whole experiment was performed on them.
Hmm.
And no one knew until now, right?
Right.
We're learning all of the fallout from this. But every day that goes by is precious. You need to stop and look at our detox. We have a 30-day detox. You can go on and learn about that.
Look at all these
Um,
great resources. This is phenomenal.
yeah, there's
Every
a lot of
mom right
resources.
now, is going, "Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you." And
We're
this is
giving
it
you
when
permission to
right.
hit the pause button.
Right,
Yeah.
and when someone's gone through this journey, I mean, we haven't talked about virtual reality games.
Oh, there's
I
a
mean,
whole nother
this
thing.
right,
Yeah.
this just keeps pornography, like you
Yeah.
said. Someone else told me
Mhm.
that the number one problem now with, young men in marriages is playing video
Yes.
games and pornography because they
Yes.
grew up on it.
Yes.
This is a big problem. So
Yeah.
moms, you know what? We God gave us these kids. We
You got
signed
to
up
be
for this. We
bold.
said, "Thank you, Jesus, for these
Yeah.
children that you gave us." And it's not easy,
Yeah.
but
We got
there
to be
is
bold.
support. Yeah, and there's
But
support all around us, just like your organization.
And please remember that it is never too late,
Mm,
right? Do not throw the towel in. You've got to get back control of your team,
it's so
and
good.
you've got to do the right things. And it's just final thing I just need to say is every day that goes by that your child is immersed in an addictive screen activity, the dopamine reward pathway in his brain is being paved more and more and more. And we know that 90% of all adult addictions start in the teenage years. And if that is the only
Mm,
reason why you hit the pause button, that
mm,
is a big reason. We do not need their addiction reward pathway to be paved headed into adulthood, because they will be more addicted to more things. It paves the
right,
way, if you will.
right.
You want to pave all the other pathways that need to be paved during childhood, like
Yeah.
those social skills and learning new things and loving just the great outdoors and all, being
Amen.
together with your family. Those are the pathways that you want to pave. So
Mhm.
if that's just one final little cry, I'm warning
Yes.
you, it is not worth it. It is not worth it.
Wow.
And if we could go back in time, we would
You would.
never go back in time and say, we wish our kids had spent more time on screens. No
No.
parent would ever say that.
No. Well,
So
Melanie, thank you for sharing your incredible story. Thank you. Number two, thank you for sharing it. Number two, thank you for rising up and being a voice, because this is why we do this podcast. Provide information, empower moms, enlighten them, educate them, and just
Mhm.
help them in their journey through motherhood. That's what we say. This is a huge
Yeah,
help. Thank you for your organization.
thank
Again,
you.
it's screenstrong.org. Did I say that
Yes,
correctly?
yes, and we have a
Okay.
weekly podcast too that we have experts on all the time. So if you need to dive deeper into the
Okay.
screen issue, I can help you with that. We can help.
Well, you're
So,
fabulous. Hugs
yeah,
to the
thanks.
family. Thank you
Thank
to
you.
Adam for letting you share his story all across the country.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're going to have an exciting guest over here, which is one of your Screen Strong. That's hard to say.
Yeah,
Screen
screen
Strong
strong.
student. Screen
Yes.
Strong student. And it's Hallie Kate. And she's going to be joining us to talk about why she chose to go without screens during high school. So this is
Yeah,
going to be really good. So
yeah.
stay with us, moms. We're going to be right back. And thank you, Melanie. You're the best.
Thank you for having me.
What kind of America do you want to leave future generations? What do you want America to look like for your children and your grandchildren? Our nation is at a crossroads, and it will be us, the mothers of America, who will determine the future of our country. What we teach and nurture in the hearts of our children and how we vote will make all the difference. If you love God, respect life, honor family, and cherish freedom, then use your voice and be heard. We teach these values in our home. Let's secure them with our vote.
Well, welcome back to the Moms for America podcast. I am, what a great conversation with Melanie, by the way. And I am delighted to talk with this impressive, beautiful young woman here. Her name is Hallie Kate, and she basically chose no screens for high school. And she's here to kind of share her story and why. So welcome, my dear. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. First of all, how old are you?
So I recently turned 18.
Ah, 18. Okay. I've got my last one's about your age here. Boy, do you have to figure out this whole world of screens. So I'd love to have you tell a little bit us about your experience with screens when you were young, and how you shifted. Was this your parents? Was this you? Was there what changed your path with screens? So tell us about your first experiences, and then we're going to kind of get onto why you decided to not be addicted to it, not make that rule the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going into 5th grade, I started developing a screen addiction. To preface this, I was going through some normal adolescent issues like not being able to fall asleep at night. And unfortunately, I found that when using screens, my brain became completely distracted from what I was experiencing in reality. And my little 10-year-old brain liked that. So, I had this little tablet, a Kindle Fire, I think, and I would hide it behind my pillow, knowing my parents would never allow me to have this tablet in my room, especially at night. And I wouldn't touch it till night fell, but I would get it at night with the hopes it would just help me fall asleep.
Okay.
However, this created a downward spiral no one could have seen coming. Slowly and unknowingly, screens were rewiring my brain. Not only
Mm.
was I not attaining the proper amount of sleep a growing adolescent needs, but the screen was prompting fruition very deceptive character patterns. At 10 years old, I found a way to hack the system and change the settings on my tablet from kids to adults. And my brain, it was just hooked to this device. In fact, I became so
Oh.
addicted to this device that it really didn't matter what the content was. I just liked how the device made me feel. I became very emotionally insensitive to reality,
Mm.
and I was only happy if I had my screen in front of me. As I began
Mm.
to get older, about a year later, I thought there was just a problem with me. Like, why couldn't I put this screen down? But little did I know,
You're kind of recognizing it a little bit? Okay.
yes, I was beginning to recognize it, and I was getting frustrated because I
Sure.
knew it was changing me, like Melanie talked about. Like, I could see the outward, signs, but little did I know, I was frustrated, but I didn't know at that time that
Sure.
the addictive hook of this device was by design.
Mm.
And I was addicted and I knew it, but as much as I had a problem, I wasn't willing to give up my screen to fix my problem. So my parents were catching me more and more in my deception, and the screen side effects were materializing. I was
Oh.
having meltdowns over minor frustrations. I was having full blown rages. I was increasingly oppositional and defiant to my parents, and I
Super
stopped.
emotional.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and I stopped enjoying activities that
Mm.
didn't involve a screen, and this is
Mm.
what influenced my parents to lock down on toxic screens, and so my parents realized that this was way beyond disobedience towards them, and, I became unrecognizable to my parents. So,
Oh.
slowly putting the pieces together, my parents removed all handheld screens from my life. I was allowed to watch movies with my family, and I had my laptop for academic assignments. At this time, I was 11, but the laptop was not allowed access to the internet. And
So did
once
they
my
made this for the whole family now? Do you have siblings?
Yes, so I have 4 younger brothers.
Okay. So
Yeah.
and this happens a lot too with that first child. They're kind of
Mhm.
the one that you experience all the firsts on. So
Yeah.
you were that. And
Mhm.
all of us have our first child. So they were now not only looking at you, but they're looking at the whole family. Like what is going to be our decision not only for
Correct,
you, but for everyone.
correct. Exactly, exactly, and so, once my parents removed toxic screens from my life, I was mad. I would
Sure.
say I was naturally livid, but, I had created such an emotional bond with screens. I know that sounds crazy, but, like, that's what's happening, and I like to remind parents that I didn't know how to function without them.
Mm.
I'd become very dependent on screens that when my parents removed them, I felt as though they'd taken a part of my life away. I know that sounds crazy, but, like, that's
No, I
what's
can
happening.
imagine.
And so, no one wanted to be and my family wanted to be around me in the weeks following the screen detox. I believe deep down I understood that my parents removed screens because they love me, but at that time, like the weeks following that, I was blind to see it. I realized during these weeks that every time I started feeling stressed, mad, or any negative emotion, that was when I longed to take hold of screen. So, like parents, remember that when your kids are anxious, like that's when I
Right.
long to hold the screen. I'd been turning to this device to distract me from dealing with reality.
Sure.
So, months after having handheld toxic screens and access to the internet withdrawn, I no longer felt increasingly anxious. I stopped having full blown rages over minor frustrations. I stopped being increasingly oppositional. And I found happiness in spending time with real people and no
Right.
longer being captive by the pull of screens.
So did you
Um,
do some hobbies? What did life look like for you once your best friend was put on pause over there? What did
yeah,
you have a chance to experience now?
for
Because
sure.
this was a
So
new world for you, right? In
it
some
was.
ways.
Exactly. So what truly sparked my recovery, was when my parents began giving me resources such as ScreenStrong, but also books on the brain and technology. which then showed me why and how the brain became addicted to this stuff so easily. I already during this time, I'm a dancer, and I play
Okay.
softball. So and I just love, running, I
Good.
love stuff like that. So I was already active, but I lost the joy in
Sure.
those things. And so and I love reading, I love all that. So but again, I didn't wanna do that stuff because of my screen.
Sure.
So basically, in order to spark my recovery, my parents were like, "We need to let her know, like, educate her on this, right?" I mean, we educate her on all this other stuff, but, and parents have every right, a kid asks you, like, "Why?" You can be like, "Because I said so." Of
Mhm.
course, do that, but for me, what really sparked my recovery was when they said, "This is what's happening to your brain."
Mhm. They
And when
educated
I
you.
once I saw that, like, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's not just affecting my mental state, it's affecting the physical development of my brain." I mean,
Sure.
physical. When you think of that, I don't know, I just my mind was blown.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was able to see for the first time what caused my addiction to screens, and let me tell you, I had to deal with a lot of anger towards big tech because once I was educated that this technology was
Mhm.
specifically designed to addict and distract our brains, I was filled with outrage towards big tech companies. However, I also knew that with my parents' guidance, that if I had been trained and taught about the dangers of social media before I had access to them and before they laid siege to my brain, I would have stood a chance against them, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So, with
Yeah,
study,
let's talk
research,
about that.
yeah,
Let's talk
yeah,
about
so,
that. Social media,
yeah,
where did you go with this? Did you have a smartphone during high school?
absolutely.
What were your parents' guidelines for you? What was their, I guess, what was their house rules?
Yeah, of course. So basically, I was 11, and once that happened, like with my
Right.
screen addiction, but then so they removed all handheld devices. So I
Right.
didn't have any handheld devices at all.
In
When
high
I
school, in
in
grammar
high
school and
school,
high school.
yes. So the rest of
Okay.
middle school and then high school, I got a dumb phone. We like to call them.
Okay.
So um, also a parallel to that would be Gab. So if you've heard of Gab phones,
Mhm.
so it has no access to internet. You can basically text, call, and that's it. And that's all you need for my
Mhm.
age. And I did that all the way through uh, 15 and up. And so, yeah, I mean, I
Mhm.
had I'm very, very involved with my people at dance and with,
Good.
like,
Yeah, what has life been like for you now that you think you wouldn't have been able to do?
right.
That's what I wanna know.
Yeah, so a big question I get is why don't you have social media, right? Because I
Mm.
always have to why? And I love this question because besides the fact that big tech has hired psychologists to trap my generation in the algorithm or any person, I found it that I don't need outside affirmation or outlooks to determine my identity. A big thing with social media, especially for females, is we get on there for affirmation,
Right.
for likes. And that is very dangerous because a majority of the people that follow you aren't really your friends. Like, you don't
Oh, it's a
really have
fake
a,
world. It's a fake
yeah,
world.
it's a fake world.
Fake friends, fake world, yep.
Exactly, and, I started noticing a lot of my friends with social media, especially during COVID, during that time when we were in our houses a lot, I noticed a big shift in my friends, like, social skills, right? Could no
Sure.
longer look me in the eye, didn't wanna hang out, and, that was very concerning. Another thing was, I remember going to a birthday party, and everyone had their phones, and I never really brought, I mean, I had my phone in my purse, but I didn't really ever get it out. But I remember specifically this birthday party, all the girls were like, "Okay, let's take a picture," and they all have, like, very, very, like, serious looks on their face. I was at a birthday party, it was a 2-hour birthday party, and I kid you not when I say this, an hour and 30 minutes of the birthday party spent on taking pictures and editing them to then post.
Mm.
And
So
I
you
remember
were like, "Wow."
Yeah, I remember sitting there looking like, this is my generation? Like, we're
Right.
so consumed with posting this, like, we had this great time. I remember looking at the pictures, like, my mom was like, "Oh, did you have it? Looks like you had a good time." I was like, "That's all fake." I said, literally, the instant they took the pictures,
It's the
they weren't
pick.
smiling anymore.
Right.
It was like,
Nobody was
I was
talking, nobody was chatting, nobody was outside, enjoying
exactly.
any of the activities. I know. And just the fact too, let alone the fake world of social media, the mean girls on social media, For
Yeah.
girls, it's different. Like when we just talked with Melanie about Adam, I think the boys really can get addicted to these games, but I think the girls get addicted to the social media and the chatting, the
Mhm.
gossip, the talk, the all that. And even my daughter, she's 24 now. She
Uh-huh.
said, "I don't know how I would have ever even survived middle school with everything that is now." I mean, it's destructive.
I know. And like social media in the beginning was created to connect you with people who are interested in seeing your real life. And now social media today has driven us so far away from what
Mhm.
is real that this generation is more fake than ever.
What a
And
great point. Yeah.
like this generation of kids, especially girls, buy into the lie that in order to be cool, they need social media. But let me state this loud and clear, like you do not need social media to be quote unquote cool. I've lived my entire life
Yes.
without social media. Even when I was addicted to a screen, I didn't have access to social media, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't on Instagram or like TikTok or any of that, Snapchat. I wasn't ever on that. Mine was just like shows on the Kindle. And so like, I can't imagine then escalating that to an algorithm, right? Like, and it like constantly seeing what you like to
Yeah.
just send it to you. And I have
Mhm.
so many, I wouldn't say so many friends because I don't think any person can be a good friend to a lot of people, but I have a great tribe of people
Mm.
that are real. And it's
Solid.
also yes,
We say our
you
solid tribe. Yes, the ones that are
very good.
always gonna be there. They're not the ones, the fake ones we'll call, that are just
Yeah.
popping in and out. Hallie Kate, would you just do a closing here with me? I want you to talk to the moms right now, because this is tough for moms. And coming from your perspective, um, encouraging them in this journey on how to handle this. I know your mom your mom and dad took an important stand in their home, and you turn out to be such a beautiful young woman. That's so inspiring right now. You can tell that they've done a great job raising you and your family over there. But encourage our moms because it is tough. And
Yeah.
personally how tough it is. But maybe some words of advice before we close out right now.
Absolutely. So, to the parents,
Yeah.
um, you, like you said earlier, you're raising the next generation. And though, like, even if whether you have one kid or seven, each life matters. And you only have one shot. And for me, don't let that stress you out because like I'm like living here to testify and to witness and to say like listen, I did have that, but now like look, I got
Look.
over that. I
Yeah, look what the
rewired
Lord has done.
exactly. Look what the Lord has done. Like he's so good and he definitely helped as I rewired my brain. But encouragement is Melanie talked about this earlier, but parents need to be parents. I'm 18 now, I'm transitioning into that more of becoming friends with my parents. They're still my parents, but when I'm younger, my parents are not my best friends. They're my parents, and I always made that very clear. And let me tell you, like in the beginning, you may have pushback especially if your kid isn't does have a screen addiction, you'll have some pushback, but you have to ask yourself, like, the sacrifice is worth it. Another thing is don't be scared to be different.
Mm.
I see that so much. And I remember my parents and my family that they sat down with us and we just had to decide, you know, are we going to let our brains quite literally be controlled and be destroyed? Or are we willing to live different and live in freedom? And
Ah,
that's what it comes down to. And
beautifully
I mean,
said.
yeah, and ScreenStrong, that's why ScreenStrong is such an amazing organization because like we are here to support you. We are here to have your back. We are here we're here to be your tribe, your solid tribe.
Right.
And if like there are people out there that are doing what you're doing. And so
Yes.
don't be scared to be different. I encourage you. I
Love
can't
it.
imagine. I know every day I like, especially when I go and I'm looking at like kids my age like this all the time. I'm like, I like my parents. Like I get a little emotional because I remember being caught in
Mhm.
a screen addiction, and
Right.
now here I am. And I
Well,
remember I'm like,
it's reality to you. I think thank God, what life could have been like. You could have been
oh,
crushed by it on all
yes,
levels. You would
yeah,
have missed all the opportunities of this amazing world that God's created. your
Mhm.
calling, your gifts, your talents, and then just let alone the whole social drama and crushing of these girls'
Yeah,
spirits and souls. So
definitely.
you are lovely, and I'm so glad that you are a student and ambassador for ScreenStrong. Thank you for sharing. I know you do some talk on the podcast that they have. I think we've got big things coming for you, and a lot of it is because you said yes and you honored your parents. So you're sweet, and I'm so excited for what your journey is going to be like. Again, would you remind everyone how to catch up with ScreenStrong, their website?
Yeah, of course. Just go to screenstrong.com. You can find all of our resources there. And I highly recommend to go there. You will find a tribe there to support you all the way through on your
Thank
ScreenStrong journey.
you.
So,
Thank you to
yeah,
Melanie again for starting this great organization. And thank you, Hallie Kate, for all that you're doing and being a good voice for your generation. We need more voices like you. So thank you. We am so glad to have you.
thank you.
All right. Thanks again, ladies. Melanie, what a powerful story. Thank you again for what you're doing. Moms, please check out screenstrong.org. I know all of you are working through these important decisions for your home regarding screens. All right, moms, I do want to remind you once again to please stop by momsforamerica.us, sign up for our newsletter, join the tribe, be a part of our community. We are moms here for you, helping you with resources, seminars, webinars, everything you can imagine that affects you in your home and in your community. Again, that's momsforamerica.us. From parental rights to public policy, from the kitchen table to Congress, we are here for you, moms. So please join the movement. Share, like, subscribe. I will see you next week. And as I always say this, let's keep changing our country one home at a time. And I will talk with you soon. God bless.